So good morning. Still few minutes left for afternoon. But I think we had two wonderful sessions in terms of giving in a perspective of where the entire, let's call it from the Indian economy perspective where we are moving and the technology aspect to it, right? So what my job is going to be primarily is going to focus on one of these areas. And Ashwani gave you a high-level information about certain solutions which can address this. And Mr. Roy talked about a digital society. So this is an attempt, which is already a live solution, of SAP's way of creating a digital society kind of solution area for the accounts payable automation. Now this primarily also focuses on the Indian economy aspect. And what's that aspect? That is the GST compliance, right? Which has driven by far, of course it has been a roller coaster ride, but then there is an increased tax compliance, still far away from what is desired. And of course it is adding to the formalization of economy. Now as you can see on the charts, it's every year it's growing, right? Now, but then it's had its own complexities, and we all know there are a lot of things which are variables, right? And there are players in this. Now, what are those typically challenges when it comes to GST compliance? These are the standard issues we have. There is GST compliance, there is MSME compliance, there is a lot of these things, right? You have to pay them in 45 days. A lot of MSME vendors are there. They're struggling with funds. Again, if you don't file it on time and you don't have the right match, and 180 days goes over, it's all lapsed, right? You lose that much. Supplier maturity is another challenge because that's one of the key area. If they don't give you the right information, the right invoice, it's all efforts, waste, and the money is lost also. There is a cash flow impact to that as well. Now, supplier maturities, I may have good suppliers who are mature enough to provide me the right data, and then a smaller suppliers, smaller vendors who are still struggling with the digital maturity. Also, because now government puts slabs of vendors in terms of GST filing and all, sometimes there is lack of information of, do I even know whether this vendor is compliant or what slabs or what is their turnover, where they do fit into, right? So a lot of this information is sometimes missing and you have to search for it and all that information. IRN, again, as per government, if there is no IRN, there is no invoice, which means there is no ITC. Everything is lost, right? Now, this is where the triangle of imbalance, what we call, when it comes to GST compliance. One side we have the government, the other side there is a vendor, and the other side you are sitting there. Now, government has ensured that the vendor connects digitally to their system, and of course, you connect digitally to the system. But whatever is happening between you and the vendor is all manual, right? So it's a lot of efforts, a lot of things, a lot of post facto, and a lot of these things are happening. And there is where there is a loss. Now, this is where, again, no IRN, no invoice, no tax paid, no tax credit, plus MSME, you don't pay them in 45 days, they are liable to charge you interest rate. GST has its own way of charging a different interest rate, so a lot of these complications are there. Now, how do you balance this out, right? How do you ensure this imbalance becomes a balance? And one of the most important factor is having this entire thing restructured, re-looked at on how that entire collaboration happens in a real time. Ashwani spoke about data, and of course the event name is Crystal Ball. So we have created certain crystal balls for you, which currently don't exist and which can help you have a seamless view of the entire thing. Now, one of them is we realign this, whatever this triangle of imbalances, right? Now, if I want to realign this, of course I have three stakeholders: the government, the supplier, and you, right? Now, what's happening is everyone is communicating separately with each one of them. Where we want to fit is all three merge into one place, right? This is what we call the technology crystal ball, right? We want that to happen, and that is enabled through technology, right? And this is what we are going to look at, how that gets enabled through technology. Now, this is a process view of how that gets enabled. I'm going to walk you through this part of it. So you have, this can be SAP ERP, it can be non-SAP ERP, doesn't matter. You are at the bottom end today, right? You're creating purchase orders and you're getting all that stuff. But whatever is going out of your ERP is all manual. It's not in real time. So whatever goes to the vendors comes back, again you fed this manually back into the system, right? Now how do you handle this? Yes, you have challenges of supplier maturity. How do that information can come in real time? Is there a way? Now that is where the first part, if you look at the top, is something called as a global vendor portal. Now, one of the challenges when it comes to technology is adoption. Adoption not just by you, but even by your vendors. And again, the supplier maturity comes into pictures. A lot of MSME vendors also. And plus, government has already said, it's already rolled out, 5 crores and above, every MSME, any vendor or any company has to mandatorily file the IRN. By end of next year or early next year or maybe mid of next year, it will be 1 CR and above. Again, it will add to further complexities, right? Now, the idea here is, when you are sending this PO, right? Can my PO give me information as a forecast about my ITC which is going to be claimed? The answer is yes. Today, this doesn't get leveraged because you don't know when the material is going to come. You have no information about when the material has been dispatched. And that's the reason the forecast part or the crystal ball gazing in this part doesn't happen. When you put in a portal, and this is my first crystal ball here, when you're sending a purchase order, you already know the tax and everything. So that is going to be the amount of ITC, and you can always aggregate those purchase orders. Now, but that still doesn't mean that can be your first forecast, that okay, this is an approximate thing, the delivery date on the PO was this is my X amount of ITC I can claim by this date. But has the vendor confirmed it? In today's world, you will not know it because it's all on phone, emails, and it's lying in different places, right? Once the order confirmation comes from the vendor, it has a date that the vendor has tentatively confirmed that this is the date I'm going to deliver and this is the date I'm going to ship. That information flows back to your ERP. And this is where the second forecast, which is a little bit accurate than the first, which was on the PO, you come to know what is the second forecast of my ITC. The third is when they actually ship. So when the moment they ship, you know for sure that this is the ITC which needs to claim because it's also based on the quantity. It may be a partial delivery. Now at this stage, you know the actual forecast of how much ITC to be claimed. Now that's the first part of your GST compliance. Second part is, of course, the most important part, right? Now, before we go there, not every vendor can come on a portal. So there is a paper invoice kind of, because of the supplier maturity, suppliers will still send you paper-based invoices. But what happens is I want to ensure when I'm approving these invoices, I need to be sure whether the vendor has paid taxes, whether this entire information is pre-validated because it's all paper-based. Right now I don't have that. So we'll come to the second crystal ball, but that's the other part of how you collaborate with your vendor. Now the second, and that's the second crystal ball we are looking at. We'll come to that with some additional information. The third part is the actual invoice submission. So vendor, when they're submitting the invoice, I need all the information about the IRN number, the QR code, and many other data, right? Maybe I want a breakup of the HSN code as well. So a lot of these things are desired. And this should come to me before it comes to my ERP itself, right? So that is like called a pre-validation. Can I pre-validate it? Now, in case of MSME, when we are talking about 1 CR and above, and this is a concept of the digital society what we have done, we have connected this portal directly to the government's IRP portal, where, one, you can get the vendors to generate the IRN number if you want to. Again, it's a free of cost system for the vendors. Ashwani did spoke about this especially vendor portal connecting to the ONDC as well as an initiative, right? So that's the further enhanced digital society we are looking at. Now, that's first IRN creation for MSME vendors is possible. You get all the QR code, all the information coming back. Second one is validation. If the vendor has already connected their system to government systems, they may not create it, but they already have the IRN number. Can I validate that? Third is, forget this, both two methods. Can I just use the invoice number of the supplier, right? And pull in all the data from the GST portal onto this invoice before the invoice comes to me, without a vendor trying to enter the IRN and all. So there are three methods we have put in, which allows information collection either by creating the IRN number through this portal or validating the IRN number, or even the IRN number doesn't exist, just based on the supplier invoice number, the information will be pulled from the GST portal, right? And we'll see for some of the snapshots, post my session, there's going to be a discussion happening on a panel discussion on a similar topic as well. Now this is where I get that invoice, right? And then that invoice comes to my system. The fourth part, or the fourth crystal ball is, I need to reconcile this. Yes, they have filed the IRN, but have they paid the taxes, right? And what taxes they have paid. Now this is where my GST reconciliation cockpit comes into picture, which tells me, because I am not just buying certain things, I'm selling as well. So I need to have a reconciliation cockpit of how much ITC I'm going to get to claim. So this is how the entire crystal ball mechanism is put in place to have one homogeneous system for you to have the right. It starts from the forecasting of the ITC to actually receiving it, validating it, and then reconciling it with your sales invoices to know what is the actual thing which is going to come in, right? The benefit of this process is, it is the time you receive the invoice till the time you are ready to pay gets shrunk, especially on the vendor portal side, because it's all digital. It's like there is also a PO compliance, because whenever they're creating an invoice, they're referring to the purchase order which you have sent, which means it's not just the GST compliance, it's also PO compliance, right? So that's where you reduce the cycle times. Now the other benefit to this, and this is the future ecosystem which is not seen here. Now accounts payable typically has been always a cost center. They take the invoices, process it, pay it. That's it, right? Now this is an opportunity to unlock. So whenever there is a business problem, you also have an opportunity to unlock few opportunities. What are they? One of them is bill discounting. Because we spoke about MSME vendors, government has created a working capital site for them to, and banks are connected. But why can't you do the same thing? Can't you have look at the accounts payable as a profit center? So can you act as a bank, right? You can. So where you tie up with the banks, or you pay them early by taking additional discount. So early pay discounts can be possible, especially for MSME vendors, where you pay them early and get more discounts out of that. And you multiply by them, maybe you will have 30-40% MSME vendors. You can have a separate program for them, right? And you are also contributing to the Indian economy growth of MSME in that space, right? As a company, as a brand, also gets recognized by vendors also. Other aspect is, fair enough, I have MSME vendors, but I have large vendors also, where I buy high net worth of goods. Can I supply chain finance them, right? Now, yes, this is where there is extended solutions of SAP which allow you to do supply chain financing as well. Now, all this can happen provided the invoice what you received is approved and ready to be approved within the 3 days it is received. Else, your net 30 or net 45 payments, typically what you have seen in the India cycle, 15 to 25 days it takes to keep the invoice ready to approve, because it all comes in paper. If you can reduce it to 3 days through this system, through this mechanism or this process, you get a whole lot of time to decide and work on it to unlock the new opportunities there, right? So that is something which is there. Now, just a few snapshots of what this product does. So this is the portal view. As you can see, the vendors can see the portal. They can see new orders, items to confirm, all orders to invoice, remittance advice. The payment advice is another big challenge, because they keep troubling you, calling you when my payment is going to pay, when my invoice is going to get paid. When it's paid, send me the remittance invoice, information, all that stuff. It gets captured as part of the portal itself. There is a mobile app also given to the vendors, and we really looked at the data consumption happening on mobile app. Mr. Roy presented that. So that's where the mobile app activity is also there. So if the smaller vendors, MSME vendors, they can create invoice from the mobile app itself, right? Because the PO reference and everything is there for them. And this is the mobile app view for them, right? So smaller vendors, be it Android, be it iOS, doesn't matter. They can download the mobile app, see the purchase orders, create the invoice. They can see when their remittance advice is seen, everything on the mobile app, right? The next part is, of course, the paper-based processing. This is where you can have the paper invoices put into the matching part of it, and there can be an approval workflow. So when I was showing the earlier screen, this point and this crystal ball, this part of the crystal ball, which is at the down, is an area where before you pay them, you go and collect that information from the GST system in real time, whether what they have paid or not, and you can park it, because an invoice approval workflow allows you to park it as well, right? So that's something which becomes very important before you pay them. And again, these may be smaller vendors or low percentage of the vendors for you. The next part is, and it's a different view now altogether. One is, I'm onboarding a vendor. Can I know before I onboard in a vendor? Again, from a GST compliance perspective, of course, you do onboard a vendor with all other information. But can I know in real time that is the vendor eligible for a GST? What is their past trend of GST filing? How delayed have they been, right? And this is all I'm fetching from the government portal. So this is a dashboard right from your vendor onboarding to vendor sending to selecting a vendor for a PO. So if there are 3-4 vendors and I want to award a PO, maybe I want to play around with my payment terms based on this, whatever. They may give you a best cost. But what's happening at the end of the day, you have a cash flow impact because they are not filing the GST properly, or they are filing delayed GST, right? So this gives you a nice view, right? Not just after, at the time of receiving the invoice, but even during selection of vendor. In fact, Government of India is coming up with a vendor rating system, which is supposed to be launched next year, where they are going to provide you this data. They are going to rate the vendors apart from it. So we can pull that information also here, right? Similarly, I want more details from the GSTN system. Now, this is what you see, a digitally signed copy from the IRP, which gives me a breakup of my line items by HSN code. It's an additional information, which allows me to have a better view of everything, right? So this is, again, we can pull that up from the GSTN system also. And then this is the GST reconciliation cockpit, where I can look at once the system's information is coming in, I know what is matched, what is not matched, what is missing, and what is the reason for what is missing, right? So that's my GST reconciliation cockpit. And I'm going to go back a little bit. So to summarize, and this is my summary of it. One, homogeneous system, one digital society. And as I said, this can unlock opportunities for you going into early payment discounts, supply chain finance, provided you have that invoice approved within 3 days of receipt, right? And validated for PO, GRN, service sheets, or even, of course, the GST part as well, right? So that unlocks a lot of opportunities. So I think, of course, I would be there outside to discuss about this more. But the next session is going to cover a little bit more detail about this, where we have a partner who will be speaking about it. So thank you very much.